Hello and welcome to the Spartan 7W Executive. What are we going to be talking about in today's video? Well, we're currently located in iniBuilds Southampton. We're on one of the general aviation stands and we're going to be doing a short flight. But before that, we're going to look at the history of the Spartan aircraft company and the aircraft itself, walk around the aircraft, look at some of the exterior details, do a quick test flight, and that will be the end of today's video. So let's get on with the history. William Skelly was born in 1878 and he was an oil magnate, so he made most of his money from oil, and in 1928 he purchased a struggling mid-continental aircraft company which had a manufacturing plant in Tulsa. He then renamed that company to the Spartan Aircraft Company. J. Paul Getty purchased a controlling interest of the company from Skelly at the beginning of World War II, assuming direct control of its operations. Their first monoplane was built in 1930 and that was the Spartan C3, and we want to be looking at the Spartan 7W today, which took its first flight on March the 8th, 1936. Now, what is the Spartan? Now, I think it's fair to say, and this is going to sound a little bit silly, it's effectively the first private jet. Of course, it's not a jet, but it's that first aircraft that introduced that personal luxury transportation, because it was based around what William Skelly, the man who originally founded it, wanted as an aircraft. He wanted to go long distances in comfort, without all the sort of downturns that aviation had at that time, because it was very early times for aviation. Now, what are some of the headline figures of the Spartan? Over 200 mile an hour cruise speed, can go above flight level 200, 1,000 miles of range, soundproofing, cabin heaters, ventilators, very sophisticated stuff for the 1930s. To allow this to happen, it has an all-metal construction, which at the time was not very common for a non-military aircraft, retractable gear, again not very common at the time, and it was powered by a Pratt & Whitney R985 Wasp Junior engine, 450 horsepower, which was pretty powerful. Normally used on twins, but in this case it's obviously a single. 36 were made. I think amazingly 19 of them are still flying, which is a crazy high percentage when you consider them. It was made partly famous by Howard Hughes. He didn't own one, but he flew one around the US, painted in USAAF colours for the war bond effort for the Second World War. Now, the Spartan 7W was built by our small aircraft team. Now, they specialise in the warbirds, the older style aircraft, such as the Bf-108, the P-40 and the T-33. This couldn't be any more different from our other team working on the 350, but it allows them to kind of hone the skills and make the aircraft the best that it can be for this period of time. Now, to follow on to this, we were able to work with Jim Savage. He's one of the enthusiasts and proud owners and operators of Spartan November Charlie 17634. Jim Savage, for nearly 18 years, he's cared for this incredible aircraft, ensuring it remains living, flying testament to the craftsmen of that company. He was featured in magazines, aviation events, and becoming a symbol of dedication to presenting this legacy and these remarkable achievements of this aircraft, and his insights were invaluable to getting this aircraft to the best position it can be. We actually visited the site, and it was a collaboration between both of us and Jim Savage, allowing us to collect information, pictures, videos, everything that we could need from the aircraft, including audio recordings as well, so every sound was able to be recorded accurately, real life, and we're extremely proud of how that's come out. Jim was able to give us documentation, original instrumentations, things like this as well, that, you know, from someone who owns and operates one of these aircraft is just invaluable, basically. Now, Echo 19 Audio Products are actually someone who's done the sounds for this aircraft, so to make the Spartan 7W feel real as possible, we've teamed up with them and their expertise to bring in that sound, that Pratt & Whitney radial engine, along with those recordings from Jim Savage. So it's just a really, really nice overall product. Okay, here we are in iniBuilds Southampton. We're actually by the Signature Aviation BizJet hangar. Now, why are we there? Well, as we said before, this is basically the 30s equivalent of what are parked in those hangars over there. So let's take a look at some of the details. As you can see, we are in November Charlie 17634 with the Spartan logo on the tail, and you can see there's a bit of difference of coloration there between the two different control surfaces. I just love that extra bit of detail and that polished aluminium. Now, again, I can't highlight how important this all-metal construction was for an aircraft in the 30s. You've got fighter aircraft such as the Hawker Hurricane that was still wood, and they were from that period of time. This was really, really advanced. Now in 2024, of course, you can use the full walk-around mode to check wear and tear, and all those sort of things will be integrated as well. So if I move up, and I love this extra bit of detail, so you can really see here, see the rose joint here, if I move it, you can see it really nicely animating with the rudder cable as well, and you can see this detail that's on the rudder itself along with the decaled on, so you can get super close to all these different things and they're not going to lose their quality. So moving up, you can see that we have the covers on. We can click to remove the covers, and also we can actually open the door, close the door, but we'll come to that later. Now remember, in 2024 this is required for the walk-around as it's a natively built-in aircraft. Now we're going to remove the chocks as well, and we've got the pitot tube quite far ahead of the wing here, trying to get some of that clean air. Now I quite like the wing itself. It's kind of an interesting design. It seems to have sort of a dihedral at the end that kicks up, all in the name of aerodynamics. One thing I missed is you can see here this sort of hilariously sized beacon light at the top and nav light, but you can see for those high speeds and high altitude you needed a fairly thick piece of glass, and that's the best that you could do in the 30s. It kind of shows you how advanced this plane was. Again, moving forwards, we've got retractable, electronically retractable, so electrohydraulic like retractable landing gear. Very advanced. Think of a Spitfire in the period. You had to hand crank the early Spitfires. I think there was something ridiculous like 18, 20 times to get the gear to come up. With this, it was a flick of a switch. Really impressive stuff. Now here you can see this is that Pratt & Whitney Junior Wasp engine, 450 horsepower. Now as you can see, we've got the mesh built in as well, so when you're doing the walk-around mode, your head won't go through things, which is really cool. And you can just about see through there. You can see all the pistons, the spark plugs going in there as well, leading back to the magnetos at the back, but there's just a huge amount of detail in that area as well. And you can really see the size of the engine for the size of this aircraft. That's a pretty big engine for this small aircraft, especially with only 4 seats. On the other side of the aircraft, fairly similar to the other one. There's nothing sort of asymmetrical going on, but if we just step back and take a look at the aircraft shape, I think it has a wonderful like Art Deco look, because it is that early 30s, but it would have been designed a few years before that, so really in that Art Deco period, and I really think it's just a fantastic, iconic looking aircraft. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have seen this aircraft but don't know what it's called, because it's that just the iconic shape. So let's move into the cabin. As you said, we can open the door and we can move inside. Now today we are in the classic cockpit. Now there are 3 different types of cockpit that come with this. This is the pure, as a Spartan would have roughly have come in the 30s. You've got a full modern type cockpit which has all the different Garmins and all the different transponders and everything like that, with a modern 6-pack gauge as well. And that is from Working Title. Fantastic Working Title avionics are in there to give you a really authentic experience when using those Garmins. Then we have a mix of one of the two, so it's this classic cockpit but also with some modern avionics if you want that, and this one which is the pure original, which is, I have to say, I think you've probably heard in these other videos before, my favourite. This is how it came from the factory, and I love that blue and white two-tone which follows through to the cockpit itself. Okay, so let's take a closer look at some of these details in the cockpit now. So moving up to the dial here are just wonderful details. Like, you can see how it looks like you've hand painted this on, and it's been looked after for from the 30s till now. As we said, 19 of these aircraft are still flying, so there's certainly not many original parts left on them. We can see here we've got the main gauges, electric gauges, RPM gauges, manifold pressure, carb temp, things like this. And then we've got what is not really a standard 6-pack gauge, because you've got the clock, your speedo, your compass, pitch, climb and altimeter, so a little bit different, but in that period things weren't standardized. And we've got the ammeter here on the left, along with the temperature, which is going to be needed because we fly at such high altitudes. And along the bottom here we've got all the engine starting controls and all those sort of things there for ventilation. As we said, cabin heat, cabin vent. This was an aircraft to be comfortable in. You've got the Spartan logos here on the rudder pedals, which I think look fantastic. Really cool logo, I think, for an aircraft. And also, as you can see, really well finished for sort of like a rudder pedal bay, but that again leads to the quality of this aircraft. Up here we've got the iPhone, which is acting as our EFB. Now you can actually turn this on by holding the button at the top. Now if you've used a route in the Garmin or on the World Planner, you can simply look at the map and you can see where we are, and here you can have the departures and arrivals, so you can update the weather. And in the settings with this one we have the dual queue, so we can change the yoke variant to dual or single. So of course that's for if you don't want to crank it over. So on the single one here you would move this pin over and hand control over and hand control back. Fair few aircraft from this period had that, but it went out of favor because frankly it's a bit dangerous if I'm honest. So that's why they've got these dual controls in here. And also this is that modern avionics that sit inside this classic cockpit, and the full modern aircraft has more options into including interior lighting, so that you can have that sort of cool ambient rainbow pink blue effect on the inside, but that's only with the modern one because obviously it wouldn't be fitted in this classic aircraft. Okay, so here you can see you can have the steps and the oil dip tray. So if we go on the outside now you can see there's that oil drip tray underneath the engine, catching any of the extra stuff that comes out, and a little set of steps that allow you to sort of get inside the aircraft. These are all things that were noted for our site visit. We thought we'd replicate here as well. And of course you can turn them off again here. Okay, so that's basically it for the front of the aircraft. Let's move into the back now and take a look at the extra details we have there. Now this is sort of, you could say, the main event. It's a beautiful aircraft to fly, but it wasn't really built to be flown. It was built to be flown in. Now this is where you would sit in the back for those 1,000-mile journeys at high speed, high altitude. You can just see the amount of leg room that you've got in here is enormous. You could just almost lay back and spread your legs out in comfort. Leather everywhere. You've got those heat cabin ventilators. Behind us is where the cargo would go, and you can just load it in via that little door there. And also you can see there's some trivia here. The all-metal Spartan, as said, that was a super important thing in the period, to say that it was an all-metal civilian aircraft, and a few other pieces of reading material. But some really nice details all over the cabin, and you can sort of see here how aerodynamic this is, especially for the period, with the sort of rounded windows, sweep back that we've got. There's no sort of sharp edges going on in this aircraft here, and I do really love the look out of the window here. Feels like a proper executive transport. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get the aircraft ready just before we start it up, listen to the sounds, and then after that we'll take off and go for a quick flight. Okay, so now we're ready to start. We're going to start the aircraft up, listen to a few different power settings on the inside and the outside, listen to how authentic those engines sound. Now this aircraft actually has an electric start, which again wasn't a given for the period and very advanced. So here we go. So we simply pull this out, and it's cool. You can actually see another feature I was trying to highlight, where if you put too much power on, it will actually break away and overcome the parking brake. So finally, let's listen to it at idle on the walk around. See, with these lower RPMs, things in the cockpit start to vibrate and shake. You see all the needles and things are moving. So we're going to bring it down to a lower RPM. And you see how that's all sort of physically connected, so everything's starting to shake a bit more. And we bring it up to a higher RPM. And you can start to see how that's actually changing with the RPM of the engine. Very cool, and I hope that gives you an idea of the sounds of the aircraft. So next we're going to take off and talk about the handling in flight. Okay, so here we are lining up the runway. Looks all clear and ready to go. Now, what do we do for takeoff? Flaps actually remain up. They're electric flaps, which are really rather advanced. And we want to make sure that we have more than 36 inches of manifold pressure. And then we climb away at around about 95 knots, getting it unstuck about 80. So increasing the power up now, remembering that it's a tail dragger. 25, 30, 36 inches of manifold pressure. That will do. We've got a very long runway. A little bit more active on the tail. Tail comes up, there we go, making sure we maintain the center line, 80, 90 knots, and slowly off into the air, and now we climb away. So looking good now. Now remember, we can use our electric gear to bring this up, so that's the right on the D-pad as you saw there, and we can hear the gear coming up, super advanced, climbing away at 90 knots now, so that's around about the speed we want, between 90 and 95, and climbing at 1,000 feet per minute. That's really, really impressive for an aircraft of this period, you know. And we're going to make a slight right turn and towards Southampton, Portsmouth area. Now, handling wise, I wouldn't, it's quite docile. It's a very stable platform. It's kind of as you imagine. It's really rather feels solid and well built in its flight model. Now I know that sounds a little bit silly, but that's kind of like what the impression that I get. Like if I start a quick roll to the left, you can see it will do it, but it's got the stability that it needs, which is super nice. Climbing away now at all the way at 100 knots, and that's not a problem. Now you've got to remember that is impressive. Now where the trim is located is kind of funny. You see the nose down, nose up here. This is the sort of trim, so you can actually move it with a little. I'm moving it with the mouse now, but when you're trimming, it's this little knob here, which is kind of interesting. So let's just do some small turns here. So that's full to the right, full to the left, and you can see no issues in handling. Really, really nice, and also not too twitchy on the takeoff as well. I'm not the best at the tail dragger, as I said. I'm not even tail dragger rated in real life. I'm more of an airliner guy, but still, it's absolutely not a problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to climb up to those high flight levels to show you that really impressive cruise performance. Okay, so here we are at flight level 190. You heard me right. We're all the way up at flight level 190. We're cruising at 155 knots comfortably. You know, I've got the prop pulled back, the mixture's all the way lean nearly out, but that's fair enough for this altitude, and it's still got more in it. I could probably keep accelerating to a bit more than this, but this is where you get that long range, really, really continent crossing sort of ability of the Spartan. Like, look at this, look how high up we are. This feels wrong to be in a cockpit that looks like this at this flight level. Off to the left hand side we've got the Isle of Wight. So if I just take a little bit of a left lean there we go, we've got the Isle of Wight off to this side, and we're just going across along the coast of the UK. But as you can see, it's still very nice to fly even at these higher flight levels. It's a little bit more sensitive, but of course that's natural. But you can see here, look, these on-center inputs, it's not twitchy at all, and that's what you would expect with this sort of comfortable cruiser. Okay, so here we are on final approach. Gears down, flaps are down, both are electric as we said, which is super impressive. Get my excuses out of the way. I'm normally a tricycle gear pilot, and I'm also normally a jet pilot, so landing a GA tail dragger, which is relatively fast on the approach as well, probably not going to be my finest landing in the world. That's absolutely fine, excuses are out of the way. Very nice and docile on the final approach, heavy on the controls. Remember, it's not hydraulically boosted, so that makes sense, and also very, very nice and stable. You can see I'm putting some inputs here, but there's not a lot happening because, you know, this is supposed to be an executive transport, so there's no need for it to be super sporty. But looking good on the pappies now. Not that we need to be really, because we're, you know, definitely not going to need the landing distance. So speed's looking good, a little bit slow maybe. Okay, coming over the threshold, start to reduce the power back and hold it off, hold it off, hold it off, hold it off, more, a little bit more, oh, we're down, brakes now, oh, definitely not the finest landing in the world, a little bit of weight on the nose wheel, quite heavy on the brakes, but whew, we made it, not the finest landing in the world, but you can see it's believable. I've also will admit that I ground looped this with one of my previous landing, so you have to have a proper tail wheel technique there to get that energy out of the aircraft, otherwise it's going to loop like it would on any other tail wheel. But it's nice to see that that's captured here. Just to talk a little bit about the technology that's involved with this flight model, we've got the modern propeller physics, so we have that moving through on 2020 and 2024, and also we have the modern fuselage system in 2024, so when we're doing a bit of slipping or things like that in 2024, the aircraft is more realistic in the flight model in that case, and also realistic overall, taking advantage of all the modern features in 2024. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a look at the Spartan, its history, how to fly it, its amazing capabilities at high flight levels, and also just a cool look at flying around the southern UK. So thank you very much for joining me in the video, and we hope you enjoy the product in stores very soon.